First of all, let me say thanks a lot. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I don't know if you know it or not. Some of you do, some of you don't. Former head of the FBI, Los Angeles, California, retired in 1979, March. And shortly after my retirement, I was asked to investigate the Jeffrey R. MacDonald case as a private investigator. He's a former Green Beret doctor who was convicted of murdering his wife and 2 children in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, February 17, 1970. It's a long story. I put in about 2,000 hours on the case. When the case first began, my investigation first began, I told Dr. MacDonald that I would investigate the matter for him. He had just been convicted and was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. I think I'm going to sneeze. I didn't make it. Okay. 3 consecutive life sentences. I told him if I found out that he was guilty, I would no longer be on the case. I would drop my investigation. Much to my surprise, from the evidence that I read, information that I developed over a period of several years, I've established beyond any question of a doubt that this man is absolutely innocent. And on October 25, 1980, I obtained a signed confession from Helena Stoeckley, the girl in the floppy hat, if you know the case. By the way, there was a best-selling book, Fatal Vision, and a movie out on this. And the girl in the floppy hat said that Dr. MacDonald did not commit those crimes. They were committed by my satanic cult group. And it was my initiation into the cult that night. And she gave me detailed information about the movement within the house that night, who did what. And I said to her, Helena, how do I know you're telling me the truth? And so one of the questions I asked her, the whole series of questions I asked her, and this is on audio video in some instances, the video, but always on audio. She said, I said, Helena, tell me about describe the jewelry box on the dresser in the master bedroom. And she described it right to a T. And just to make sure, I went down to Sears Roebuck and got a catalog and brought it back. And I said, Helena, pick out the jewelry box in this catalog that was on the dresser. She picked out the jewelry box. It matched. Also, she told me that she attempted to ride a rocking horse in the child's bedroom that night. But she couldn't ride it because the spring was broken. The only way she could have known that spring was broken was to have been there the night of the murders, February 17, 1970. So anyway, I submitted a 1,200-plus page report, actually 1,100-plus page, almost 1,200 pages, in March of 1981 to the FBI, Judge Webster, with a personal letter. He was director of the FBI. And I said, Judge, I believe this man is innocent, and he'd run out of money, and, you know, I'd continued to work it as I usually do. And I think that the FBI should continue along the lines of my investigation. And much to my surprise, I started receiving, by the way, it also went to the FBI and to the U.S. Department of Justice, the Solicitor General's office. And much to my surprise, my witnesses, my 19 new witnesses, including Helena Stoeckley, started calling me and saying, hey, Ted, the FBI has interviewed me. They're trying to get me to recant. And I'm saying to myself, that isn't the responsibility of the FBI. The FBI is supposed to gather information, not destroy it. And that was my first clue that we had a serious problem in that case. And then I continued on, and I had a number of other cases that I handled privately. And in each instance, I noticed evidence was lost, destroyed, stolen. I noticed that there were strong indications of corruption. So I asked myself, now what's going on here? And over the years, I started gathering material until about 2 years ago. Up until about 2 years ago, I kept saying there's a loose-knit network operating in this country involving drugs, pedophilia, pornography, prostitution, corruption, etc., etc. 2 years ago, from my research, I'm convinced it's much more serious than that. It's more than a loose-knit network. It is a conspiracy. By the way, this conspiracy involves pornography, drugs, corruption, involves pedophilia, involves organized child kidnapping rings, the Finders out of Washington, D.C., CIA cover, covert operation, involved in the international trafficking of children, terrorism, bank accounts, and it goes on and on. By the way, I strongly urge you to go to my booth after this lecture and get my research, my book and my research on missing children. We're going to go into that a little bit in the lecture. But my missing children lecture documents that the Finders, an organization in Washington, D.C., this CIA front. It's a covert operation. They're involved in international trafficking of children. And I have a U.S. Customs report, official U.S. Customs report, in my book on the missing children. So I urge you to get it. It's only $10. Now, if you buy any of my products, any of my research, I beg of you, I don't want you to buy it unless you make a half a dozen copies and send it to your friends, okay? The name of the game with me is not copyright. I could care less about copyright. The name of the game is education, education, education. We need to know what's going on in this country today. So any of my research that you buy, please make copies and get them out to your friends. This is the satanic cult movement in this country today. Now, when Helena gave me that signed statement, I said, what in the world is this all about? I don't know anything about Satanism. I'd heard the word, and that's about it. From the Bible, of course. So I began my little journey forward. And one of the matters that I developed information about was an individual I learned about was Aleister Crowley. He likes to have his name pronounced Crowley to rhyme with holy. And the Satanists today, and for the number of years in the past, have basically used his philosophy and his writings as a guide. And so let's talk about some of his writings and teachings. And here we have Of the Bloody Sacrifice. And here we have The Blood is the Life. And here on page 94 of his book, it would be unwise to condemn as irrational the practice of those savages who tear the heart and liver from an adversary and devour them while yet warm. In any case, it was the theory of the ancient magicians that any living being is a storehouse of energy varying in quantity according to the size and health of the animal and in quality according to its mental and moral character. At the death of the animal, this energy is liberated suddenly. The animal should therefore be killed within the circle. We're talking about the satanic circle, or the triangle, as the base may be, so that its energy cannot escape. An animal should be selected whose nature accords with that of the ceremony. Thus, by sacrificing a female lamb, one would not obtain any appreciative quantity of the fierce energy useful to a magician who was invoking Mars. In such a case, a ram would be more suitable, and this ram should be virgin. The whole potential of its original total energy should not have been diminished in any ways. And now listen to this sentence, folks, closely. For the highest spiritual working, one must accordingly choose that victim which contains the greatest and purest force. A male child of perfect innocence and high intelligence is the most satisfactory and suitable system. We're talking about human sacrifices. There are, in my estimation, over 3 million practicing Satanists in America today. Now, how did I come up with those figures? I have informants. I have an informant in South Central L.A., population of 200,000, told me there are 3,000 practicing Satanists in that area. That's where the famous, well-known case, McMartin case on the preschool took place. I have an informant in Lincoln, Nebraska, told me 3,000 practicing Satanists. Lincoln, Nebraska, town of 200,000. South Bay area, Manhattan Beach area, about 200,000. Iowa City, Iowa, town of 150,000. 100,000. 1,500 informants. That averages out about 1.5% of the population. Anyway, we're talking about human sacrifice. About 50 to 60,000 individuals are sacrificed every year. There are 8 basic satanic holidays. There are other holidays for the various covens, but there are 8 basic ones that they all honor. Now, one of the practices, this is another book of Aleister Crowley. One of the theories, we talked about human sacrifice, okay, there it is, right in their book. I mean, I didn't invent that. That's there. Another aspect of their religion, if you want to call it religion, by the way, the federal government does recognize the satanic movement as a religion, yet in Linda's case, the word Satanism was brought up by her husband's defense attorney. They sealed the records, have not made it available, and when she writes to her children and says, believe in God, she gets a letter back from these people saying, you can't mention God in your letter to your children. That's just an example, okay? Okay, we're talking here about the 666. That's the beast. That's Aleister Crowley himself. Moreover, the beast 666 advises that all children shall be accustomed from infancy to witness every type of sexual act, as also the process of birth, lest falsehood fog and mystery stupefy their minds, whose error else might thwart and misdirect the growth of their subconscious system of self-symbolism. What we're talking about there is children from birth being exposed to sex. These people, the satanic movement in the world, has set up preschools throughout the world for the purpose of getting their hands on our children. The parents drop them off at 9 in the morning, come back and pick them up at 4, 3, 4, 5 at night. In the meantime, in many of these preschools, the children are exposed to sex from the time of birth. In Linda Wiegand's case, it's exactly what happened. These children have been exposed to sex from the time that her ex-husband got his hands on those babies right up to the present time. And I have a page missing, and I'll have to dig that one up some. I don't know what happened to that page. Maybe the Satanist got it. It may therefore be considered improper as a general rule for your sexual gratification to destroy, deform, or displease any other star. Mutual consent to the act is the condition thereof. It must, of course, be understood that such consent, and we're talking about sex now, is not always explicit. There are cases where seduction or rape may be emancipation or initiation to another. Such acts can only be judged by the result. What they're saying is, it's all right to rape somebody. I mean, if they don't consent, it's all right to rape them because it's for the cause. Elements of possible satanic activity I see in the Bonet case. I can't prove it. From the day that case broke in the news until today, I see signs of it, indications of it. The tourniquet around the little girl's neck. One of the practices that they have in their mind control activity is to take a child right up near death and then bring them back from close to death. I would suspect that that's a possibility here, that they took this child too far and the child passed away. I don't know again, but I'm saying based on my experience and expertise, good possibility of that. I'd say there's a good possibility that, in fact, I'm confident that the family knows much more than what they're telling. The fact that they were not cooperative for a number of months would indicate that. My instincts tell me that. I would have to say she was probably a victim of a pedophile operation or a pedophile ring, which dovetails into Satanism and cult activity. Also another altar that had been broken. This is, of course, you recognize the star. Now, this is a satanic symbol. Put the next one up. Hold the first one. There it is right there. Put the first one back on. Now overlay them. Turn it around that way. Okay, any question about that, folks? No. Well, let's read what that says. Asmodee, a strong and powerful king, appears with 3 heads, the first like a bull, the second like a man, the third like a ram. He has a serpent's tail, the webbed feet of a goose, and he vomits fire. He rides the infernal dragon, carries lance and pennon, and is the chief of the power of Amaman. He must be invoked, be bareheaded, or otherwise he will deceive. He gives the ring of virtues, teaches arithmetic, geometry, and other handicrafts, answers all questions, makes men invisible, indicates the place of concealed treasures, and guards them if within the domain of the Amaman. Oh, what do we got here? Another satanic symbol. You think that wasn't a satanic site? Overlay it. Okay. Is that it? The other way around, isn't it? Yeah. Flip it around. Okay, there you go. Okay, now let's read what that sign means. That is the seal of Amsman scale. I guess that. No, that's the wrong. That's the one before. Belial, a mighty king, created next after Lucifer, appears in the form of a beautiful angel seated in a chariot of fire and speaking with a pleasant voice. He fell first amongst the superior angels who went before Michael and other heavenly angels. He distributes preferences of senatorships, causes favors of friends and foes, and gives excellent families. Familiar. He must have offering and sacrifices made to him. Next. And there's another satanic sign. I couldn't make that one out, so I couldn't match it with anything, obviously. Here's some ovens. That was a large circle with a number of signs in it, a lot of writing. We couldn't get up high enough that we could take a good picture of it. Next. And let's put that back a minute. That's another case. Okay, nothing came of that. Nobody was interested in an abandoned satanic site, even though it appears to have been related to the McMartin case. I have to say that I was very disappointed. We gathered this evidence privately. The police don't have the capability of doing so. Too many high-pressure people involved. Too many prominent individuals involved. So that's just an overview of the McMartin case, folks. No question in my mind that it was a satanic operation. And Dr. Roland Summit, UCLA psychiatrist, says, who's done a lot of research in this field also, that there are 50 other preschools in the country where the kids have talked about going down into tunnels. Now, this is another case that I worked out of Philadelphia, similar case to Linda's. And this is the Lou Bear case. Lou called me back in, I guess, the late 80s. And he said that he had gone underground with his children. The great FBI came in with their SWAT team, as they did with Linda, raided his house, grabbed him, put him in jail, took the children, turned them over to his ex-wife, whose boyfriend, according to the children, was sexually molesting them. And Lou said, "What can I do, and how can you help me?" So I was willing to go back and testify for Lou. And one of the matters that I was going to testify about were the drawings by the kids. And it's not a funny thing, but it's an established fact that children who have been sexually molested for some reason or other, when they're, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years old, whatever, will invariably draw pictures of their activity, of their exposure to these nefarious matters. Invariably they do that. Now, when I was that age, I was drawing cars and airplanes, and the girls were drawing flowers, right? But these kids invariably will draw these pictures. As you can see from Linda's case, she has pictures at her booth that her children have drawn. Now, I was going to go back and testify for Lou, and I was going to say that based upon my reviewing the pictures drawn by the children, they've been exposed to a satanic activity. This is the most telltale of all the pictures. I'm going to show you a series of them. This is a totem pole with a goat's head at the top, children at the various highest level. I understand, again, I say I understand because I'm not sure, because there's so much secrecy involved in the satanic movement. 8, 10 layers of classes of people within themselves, like the dabblers on up to the very highest level. But from my sources and my informants, I've been told that the various highest level of Satanism, you will have the totem pole, which is usually 3 to 6 feet tall, made out of wood, with the goat head at the top. So I was going to testify that based on my experience, that these children were exposed to the highest level of Satanism mainly because of this drawing right here, the goat hole, the totem pole with the goat's head. The judge would not allow me on the witness stand. I flew all the way to Philadelphia from Los Angeles, wouldn't allow me to testify. These are some of the other drawings. This is a body on a slab, undoubtedly an altar where they sacrificing blood. The genitals, and let me mention this also, children who have never been sexually molested in a recent study, not a recent study, a study back about 7 or 8 years ago, children who have never been sexually molested do not draw the genitals. Children who have been sexually molested, a high percentage of them draw the genitals, and so children who have been ritualistically sexually molested, a higher percentage will draw the genitals. Little Matt Bear drew a picture of people, a fire, baby being thrown in the fire, human sacrifice, obviously. An altar, bone, liver, blood, kitty. And another ritual ceremony. Here's trees, people, fire. And another, people have no cloth on, he says. Table, knife, devil. Okay, that's the Lou Bear case. Now, I think we're going to we got just a few more minutes, and I want Linda to take the podium, talk about her case. But I'm going to run through these next slides real fast, Linda. 100,000 children disappear every year per Reader's Digest, July 1982. Next. This is the official U.S. Customs report that establishes the great CIA, under the name Finders, a covert operation, is involved in the international trafficking of children. It's about 9 or 10 pages long. We'll just flip through the pages. If you want to take a look at this report, go to my table and take a look at it. And if you want, please buy it. It's $10. Make copies. Get it out to your friends. Okay, just go real quick. Keep going. Go to the last page. Just flip them and then just go to the last page. That's how long it is. Keep going. And some more. That's it. Okay. The way this case came about is a group of children were seen in a park in Tallahassee, Florida in 1987. The police were called. The men were well dressed. They had a van. Police came out, talked to the kids. The kids said they were en route to Mexico to a smart school. And the police traced that van back up to the Finders in Washington, D.C. They raided the Metropolitan Police Department, raided the Finders headquarters and also a warehouse. And they found all this paraphernalia. They found information about international trafficking of kids all over the world. The Finder, based on my research subsequent to that, again, CIA covert operation. The customs agent was called into it because of the possibility of pornography, and I guarantee that there was pornography involved. Guarantee, okay? Now, this report, this was his report. Again, this is available, Missing Children, $10 at my booth. This report is the final interview by the customs agent when he attempted to go over and get more information than he'd already developed. Okay, let's just go over this. Leave it there. Yeah, leave it there. Okay. April 2, I arrived at the Metropolitan Police Department at approximately 9 a.m. Detective Bradley was not available. He was the detective who was supposed to help him. I spoke to a third party who was willing to discuss the case with me on a strictly off-the-record basis. I would advise that all the passport data had been turned over to the State Department for their investigation. They found passports in the van. The State Department, in turn, advised the Metropolitan Police that all travel and use of the passports by the holders of the passports was within the law and no action would be taken. This included travel to Moscow, North Korea, and North Vietnam during the late 50s and mid-70s. Folks, it was illegal to travel there to those countries during that period. The individual further advised me of circumstances which indicated that the investigation into the activity of the finders had become a CIA internal matter. The Metropolitan Police report had been classified secret and was not available for review. I was advised that the FBI had withdrawn from the investigation several weeks prior, and that the FBI Foreign Counterintelligence Division, that's FBI headquarters, by the way, had directed the Metropolitan Police Department not to advise the FBI Washington field office, that's the field office, of anything that had transpired. No further information will be available. No further action will be taken. No action will be taken. The case was closed, and here we have a CIA internal matter. The finders group, the finders case organization, was founded by a CIA agent back in the early 60s, and here we are, 1987, still operating. I have the man's name. I have all the information on it. A real quick overview: CIA experiments with mind control on children, MK Ultra. This is an outstanding article. It's available in that same report. Just flip the pages. Keep going. Okay, folks, I'm going to turn the podium over to Linda Wiegand. We have about another 15-20 minutes, I believe, and Linda's going to talk about her case. This is one of the most classic examples of corruption I have ever seen. And believe me, you can tell from my lecture that I've seen some pretty awful examples of corruption. Go on from there. Linda Wiegand, my friend, God bless her, she's a fighter.
Thanks. I'm here to tell you I'm a living, breathing example of what happens when a satanic cult abuses your children. And sometimes I put slides above the abuse, but after seeing the slides of the children this morning, I think you understand what this is about. And there's pictures over at the booth right out here. The devil to me, maybe 10 years ago, was something that was, I went to Catholic church. I'm still Catholic and Christian. I went to church, and the devil was something out there that you didn't want to talk about at night, and you didn't talk about in the dark, and it was just something in science fiction movies. My children disclosed just sexual abuse in early 1993. They were masturbating. They were pulling their pants down at the supermarket. They started having oral sex with my St. Bernard, inserting pens and pencils into the dog's rectum. The behavior got worse and worse and worse. I woke up one morning. I don't usually talk about this stuff. I woke up one morning to the bread, the butcher block that you cut bread on, because I'm a vegetarian, so it wasn't a butcher block. And there was a huge bread knife in the middle of the butcher block with a big pool of ketchup in the middle of it. And that was on my kitchen table. And I said to my children, what is this? Who did this? What does this mean? And my son John said, Mom, this is some of the things that we have to see and that have been done to us. I knew I had a big, big problem, and I had no idea what it was called. I called all over the country. I had children's drawings for the police. My husband was under arrest for sodomy and oral sex with my children. And I had all kinds of drawings that had circles and people with, there was black candles always in the middle of these tables, and all this oral and anal sex pictures. And I went to the Catholic Church and I said, I don't know what this is, but it seems to me these drawings are significant. There are all kinds of symbols I don't understand, and devil heads and goat's heads, and I had no idea I did not know what satanic ritual abuse was. Church asked me if I ever had a psychiatric exam. And I said, actually, I'm completely sane. I just know that there's symbols in these pictures. No one would help me. Even though there was a prosecution going on, they said if you ever bring up satanic ritual abuse, your credibility is lost and you'll just be a kook and it doesn't exist and it's not organized in America. Just focus on child sexual abuse. So I took my children to a child sexual abuse hospital. And while they were being treated, and I had legal custody of my children, and my husband and his lawyers and the judge found out my children were in an expert hospital, they confiscated my house, everything I've ever owned, from my baby pictures to my clothes. I walked away with literally the clothes we had on our backs. Took my cars, my federal post office box mail, my income, my assets. I lost everything by taking my children to an expert on child abuse. It was trying to stop me from what my children could disclose from being uncovered, to try and just break that we had no assets to have my children have medical attention. The children were being treated for sexual abuse, and I had provided all the documentation. And one day, the doctor said to me, "I need you to come into my office." She said, "This is a classic case of SRA." I had no idea. I mean, SRA, is that like an Irish Republican Army thing? I don't know what SRA is. She said, "Satanic ritual abuse." And she showed me the drawings that the children were doing in her office, and they were of blood sacrifice, of people cutting their arms and dripping blood in chalices, of chalices with devil heads, and on and on and on. It includes group sex. It includes children being killed. And I remember I just felt like my guts were just punched out of my body. I did not know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I called every organization in the country asking for help, children's organizations. And no one wants to acknowledge satanic ritual abuse. And all the child abuse organizations only say that they lobby. They don't actually help people. And so my quest to save my children has taken me here. And as a consequence, and I can tell you here today, there are other mothers who are here today to ask me for help who have children that were victims of satanic ritual abuse. And it's really hard for me because I'm only one person, and my life has been annihilated, although I have to say it's being rebuilt for the better. But John and Ben, my boys, are 11 and 8, and have lived for 15 or 16 months in the home of a satanic abuser who has been documented as a member of a cult, who 25 people and the state's attorney in Connecticut are investigating and have substantiated sexual abuse and the cult. And yet the governor and no one has been acting to protect my children. So it makes me wonder just how high this goes. But I'll tell you a story about a little boy that affected my life, and I guess it's besides John and Ben, who I always think about and who I want to stop this from ever happening to another child again. I heard a story about a little 8-year-old boy. His mom had taken him to protect him, and they were found. And I had been underground for 3 years, by the way. The mother and this little boy were found. The little boy was taken to a basement. He was crucified alive. First he was skinned. When they torture the children, it causes a physical reaction of the endomorphins in your body to just increase because of the terror and the pain. So when the Satanists drink the blood, they actually get like a chemical, a high, like a drug high from the blood of a tortured victim. And this little boy was found in the basement dead, with no blood, skinned alive and crucified. This cannot happen to any more children. I can't do it alone. My children are there. It's really hard. I need each one of you to know this is not a fairy tale. This is not something out of science fiction. I was a mom who ran a charity and baked oatmeal cookies for my kids. And because my children are victims, I have to stand here and I have to tell you these horrible stories. And I could tell them all day and all night, because both Ted and I get letters and calls for people begging for help all over the country right now. And the only way we can help them is to help save John and Ben first, set the precedence. We will not tolerate this anymore, not only to the children, but to our own lives. And we will not tolerate this. We must stand together. And I ask you to please, especially prayer and donations and letters, and help me save John and Ben. And then the rest of us are forming a task force to go around the country and start saving everybody else. Thank you very much.